Welcome to the next stop.
We don't really know where the world is gonna go, but now everybody knows that you can't stop for too long. Got to keep
The first step in generating wealth is to pay yourself first.
but now everybody knows.
Stay tuned,
Stay protected.
stay focused.
Stay connected.
There's a lot of different types of HELOC products that are now on the market, some of them geared towards velocity banking, and that's really good news.
This is probably the largest asset you will ever have in your life.
Right.
Here's some direction and some instruction on how to leverage this vehicle so that you can help yourself, help your family, accomplish your goals. We're not educated that way.
We use a strategy to pay off our home in 4 years.
Validation of your retirement account says what you thought was a retirement account is no longer one.
When I tell you, you're going to be shocked to learn. If you didn't come from a wealthy family,
You can make sure a wealthy family comes from you. So it starts with pay yourself first today,
Yeah, starting today.
right now. Put your money in somewhere secure. It's about the ability to not lose. I will take base hits all day long versus winning and losing. Somewhere secure, compound your money, and then you leverage OPM, other people's money, to exponentially grow it. That's how you generate wealth.
So whether you're joining us to crush debt or build wealth, time is the most valuable asset.
and we're so grateful that you're spending your time here with us.
Keep going.
Welcome back. Tonight we're talking about something most families ignore until it's too late. We're talking about protection, not just from lawsuits or creditors, but from probate, from courts, from estate taxes, opportunists.
From each other,
Yeah.
family, from your circle of trust, like from business partners, from everything. And it's something that we tend to not address until it's too late. And that's the scary part.
Yeah, sometimes it's protecting it from the people that we leave behind. Maybe you've built a business or you're building generational wealth. Maybe you've worked hard to grow something real. I know we have, but if it's not protected, everything you've created can be lost, delayed, depleted, and when you're no longer here to defend it. That's the point of what we're talking about tonight. So in this live stream, we're going to be breaking down 2 types of protection that you'll need. One is protection for today, like shielding your business, properties, or accounts from lawsuits, divorce, debt, right? And then we're talking about protection for tomorrow, and that's making sure that your wealth transfers smoothly, privately, key factor here, and securely without courts or confusion. So we're going to explain what a trust actually is, how it works, and why it's not just for the ultra wealthy. We'll also look at what happens when people don't plan. By the end of this stream, you'll walk away with clarity, confidence, and a free trust and assets prep guide to get you fully prepared. It includes everything you need to ask the right questions, build the right foundation, and protect your family's future. So, Donnell, why don't they do this? Why do they assume that it doesn't need to be done or that they can just do it later?
Well, I think it's a couple things. One, it's clarity. It's like, what should I do? When should I do it? How should I do it? What should I go about? What's the best trust? How many trusts are there? Like, who should I talk to? Like, man. And
It's overwhelming.
that's the part.
Yeah.
It becomes this mountain that it seems insurmountable to be able to climb or navigate, when in truth, it's really no different than the wealth equation. It's about getting started. It's
Yeah.
about just taking the step to put the right pieces of this puzzle in place so that it can be protected.
Okay, so it's spoiler alert, but I want you guys to know that we did prepare this guide. And the reason why we prepared this guide was because we had interviewed so many people about this process. Not a single one of them would let us have an idea of what we would need to gather before we committed with them. And that was weird to us because we need to feel prepared going into this. Like, if we had to go research stuff or grab things, we just wanted to be prepared. And so we did the work for you. Since we had gone through this process, we went far and beyond what the majority of people would do so that you don't have to, so that you feel like you're making confident decisions. You understand what it is you're going into. And we also included a ton of questions when you're interviewing someone to help you establish your trust and get protected. So all of that's coming up. Not only are you going to have a deep dive into what it is you're going to be establishing, why you need to set this whole thing up in the first place, you're going to show them all about that. But then we're also going to give you something to take home so that you'll already understand it, but for those who, if you know, you know, there's already a glossary of terms in there. What?
And here's the thing. You can't just
We know who made we made
you can't
smile
go
with that one.
over this, right? I mean, this is actually pretty major because with all of the people that we did talk to, all of the different companies that we did interview, this doesn't exist without paying for it.
Yeah, right.
Like what we are about to provide to you, share with you.
We created ourselves, by the way. We didn't take from anybody else.
Absolutely. And I don't know that it exists.
Yeah,
So
we didn't find anything like this.
I'm pretty proud of it. And let's be clear, what role did I play in pulling this together? I say words. That's my job. This lady here, I think it's pretty spectacular when you take a look at it, the detail, and I think the ease in being able to understand what are the steps to take and how to go about it. I think is pretty powerful.
Yeah, what he's saying is he's married to a type A person, and I needed to have it organized so that you could have it organized. So all my type A people will appreciate that. And for the people who benefit from type A people, you're welcome. We love this work. Okay, so why is this important? Why don't most people do this? It's because it is overwhelming. So hopefully what you've taken from just this introduction to this topic is we've already done a lot of work to make this not overwhelming for you. Okay, so go grab somebody, grab a snack, and just know that you will be handled with care. While we roll this out this evening, we're going to cover both the pillars 4 and 5. This is protection and legacy planning. So you have that all packed into this one stream. You're going to love it. You're going to feel confident. You're going to feel secure at the end of this, that you can make confident and educated decisions. And that's what being self-directed is all about.
Control.
Yep. That's what we aim to do. So you ready to jump into it?
Of course.
All right, let's go.
1, 2, 3.
The goal should be where can I achieve exponential growth? Exponential growth.
Let's just get into it. Into it. Let's just get into it.
All right.
You made it.
Just
Close one. Yeah.
So again, we are jumping into pillars 4 and 5 of the family bank. And really it boils down to this. It's about protection. You've done all the necessary work to create this family bank, but what happens or how quickly is it able to erode just based off a simple mistake or happenstance or dispute? It's making sure that your machine, the machine that you're putting into place, can't be lost due to something simple. And the truth behind that is, grab that, what you don't structure, you don't control. And what you don't protect, you are just about guaranteed to lose. And the key piece is to make sure that you have the right structure in place so those things don't happen. And so as we've been talking about the family bank and the pillars associated with it, we started with cash flow. And cash flow is just about understanding what's coming in, what's going out, so you can identify what that dollar amount looks like that you can be able to access to be able to do other things. We talked about leverage, how to put money into play, meaning once you see leverage, once you see where it's located, it's kind of hard to miss. And you start to identify other areas of opportunity that you can leverage, like your time, like your job, like your home, like life insurance, like your W-2 income, your side hustles, understanding where your leverage is located, and then putting that money that you've identified as it relates to your cash flow and the leverage where it's located, and putting it in a vehicle to where your money can start to compound and make money for you. And once you do those things, the next step, the next stage is we have to protect it. And I get it. I'm showing, today we're covering both of these items. And it's because, from my perspective, this protection applies to both today and tomorrow. Meaning protection against those happenstances that occur with those assets that you have currently. And then how do you make sure that, God forbid, if you're no longer here, that this machine continues to run? And in order to sustain that growth, to sustain that family bank, we have to make sure that the people who we're handing it over to are properly educated and are in the boat with us. Will it make the boat go faster is that last piece. So the bottom line is these are the 7 pillars. And again, we're talking today about protection. And that's protection for today and protection for the future. And the key piece here is these two are very much connected, but they don't necessarily involve the same activities, same actions, same tools, but they are very much connected. And again, as we like to function, it's about guarding against lawsuits, liens, a protection against the people around you, the those individuals who may be coming along within your family trust or your family bank, and not allowing them the ability to be able to destroy what you've been able to create. So it's making sure that the right structure and guardrails are put in place so that your machine can continue to function over time. So again, today we're talking about protection for today compared to protection for the future. And again, we've talked about cash flow, we've talked about leverage and assets. We're focused on that shield. What is that system that needs to be in place to make sure that this is sustainable? And this isn't a when I get to it opportunity. This isn't a once I've paid off my bills or once those student loans are gone. It's, hey, what is the structure you're putting in place today to safeguard those areas of assets that you've accumulated to be able to protect you now? Because as it relates to, I guess, whether it's a fire drill or a tornado, that's not something that you actually schedule to be able to guard against. It's something that you prepare for ahead of time, right? You practice that fire drill, you practice that tornado warning and where to hide and where things are and what to access. Where's the flashlight? Does the flashlight have batteries in it? Are they charged? Such that when that instance comes, because it's going to come, when that instance comes, are you prepared? So this protection is about making sure you're prepared for whatever may come. And why? Why is this so urgent? Why is there a focus on making sure that we get this done today and right now? Well, it's because growth without protection, you are placing yourself in a position to where you can lose everything you've accumulated if it's not structured properly. And think about it. You could build $1 million nest egg, and with one trip and fall of a renter or one creditor coming after you or one mishap as it relates to some accident, you can then be sued, and everything that you've built, everything you work for, can then crumble. So again, it's not, if you've built something or if you've done all of the necessary work to put something in play as it relates to your machine to generate and build wealth, what good is it if it's not protected? And that structure matters. And again, that structure against lawsuits, creditors, and taxes. And we don't talk as much about taxes, but it's also making sure that the vehicles that you're creating and the assets that you're putting in play are guarded against whoever the president is in the future, whatever inflation may look like in the future, making sure that you're in a position such that you're not impacted by creditors, lawsuits, and most importantly, taxes. And then that legacy planning piece. There is going to come a time when we are no longer here. And so what is that structure that needs to be in place to make sure we are guarding against whatever that wealth transfer process needs to be, and making sure that the people that we're handing the reins over to have the proper education, knowledge, and understanding to make sure that vehicle can continue to run. And what specifically are we protecting? And this is not an exhaustive list, but I think it's a pretty specific one. It's about protecting your income. And this is that engine that fuels this machine. So it's about protecting your income, protecting your assets, protecting those things that you've accumulated over time that you intend to pass down to generations, or those assets that are income generating that you intend to pass on for generations. And it's also protecting for your family's future. This one here, though, we talk very little about protecting your privacy, meaning making sure you have the right vehicle in place such that the anonymity is there, or how does it go? Control everything. What is it? Control everything, but what is it saying? How does it go?
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, control everything. But bottom line is making sure that your privacy is protected, God forbid, whatever happens, so they can access whatever the entity might be, but they can't come after you personally. So let's see what else from there. And then internal claims versus external. So as it relates to what it is we're protecting, your income, your assets, your privacy, and your future, Where are those claims coming from? Where there are those internal actions that we want to protect, want to make sure you're protected from, but there's also those external actions and activities and claims that we want to make sure we're protected from. So when we're talking internal claims, we're talking partnerships. So what does that structure look like inside of your business to make sure that one partner can all of a sudden destroy everything that's been built? Those operational liabilities within your entities, even business debts. Passing on, making sure you're passing on assets that can flourish, not just debts that cause your family even more heartache. And then those external claims. For instance, let's say you do have a business and that business is in play and functioning, but making sure you're structured right such that if God forbid you have some type of personal issue, you get into a car accident and the person is able to then sue and actually not just pierce everything that you have personally, but also make it through to the business and be able to attain that. So it's making sure that we have the right protections in place so that those personal accidents, lawsuits, malpractice, and claims can't target your assets. And then a piece that, again, we rarely talk about is making sure that these two pieces, these two places aren't commingled. Meaning, you're protected from internal claims and you're protected externally, but making sure you're not mixing those personal and business activities, because what can end up happening is your personal actions can cause piercing of the veil of your business or your internal structure. So it's making sure that where there's commingling, there is either a structure in place for such, or we're making sure that we don't do it, so we have the right structure in place to keep things separate. And what are those asset types? There's many. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but I think it's a pretty solid bucket. It's those assets where, let's call it land, REITs, subject tos, rental properties, your personal vehicles, those assets where there's some specific structure that has to take place to make sure you can't pierce it. And then it's those safe assets like mutual funds, stocks, bonds. In most cases, those are fairly secure sitting at that brokerage firm. It's just that there's risk involved with which things that you can't control, like the market or market fluctuations and things like that. And then there are those items that are somewhat of moderate risk, meaning if you've got a self-directed retirement account, you've got some decent structure inherently built inside of that self-directed retirement account, but depending on what that retirement account is invested in could determine which asset class that vehicle might be in. Meaning if it's all tied to the stock market, it's safe from the perspective of being able to be accessed from some of those internal or external claims. But if you have the self-directed retirement account built around assets like self-storage facilities or rental properties or things like that, you want to make sure that that structure is in place such that a renter or some customer who is participating in whatever that business structure might be can't then get through the veil and pierce your retirement account and come after them as well. So from a real world threat scenario, imagine having a rental property, whether you have it personally, whether it's inside your LLC structure or inside of a traditional retirement account, a self-directed retirement account. And a renter has an issue for whatever, slips or whatever that issue is, there's some type of injury that occurs to the person renting that property. A lawsuit is almost guaranteed. We know that legal action is going to target all of your assets, not some. And so the key is making sure that you have the right protection in place such that it can't access your savings, your home, your future income, because all of that is risk if not protected. And what does that structure look like? It could be as simple as a trust. It could be an individualized trust or an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp. What that structure looks like is dependent upon what it is you're investing in actually. And there's preference as far as which one you should use. But the key piece is without having that trust in place, you're setting yourself up for a potential downfall. So we want to make sure we have that trust for that shielding of the asset and also so things can be handled privately. Let's see, is that fitting? Yeah. And so protecting your family bank from outside threats. Again, there are a few different ways to go about it. It could be structuring things with the proper liability protection, like entities such as LLCs, S corps, or C corps. It could be insurance integration. It's making sure you have a properly designed cash value life insurance based product to be able to assist or support in those areas where needed. But it's also making sure that tax efficiency is a goal and or a focus for what it is you're doing. And again, anonymity, making sure that you can't be seen. But what are, I guess, some of those um, liability protections? And it's not a long list. It's what we all understand to be LLCs, limited liability companies, or corporations, or even limited partnerships for the most case. So it's making sure that depending on the asset you have, do you have the right structure in place to make sure that if anything was to occur, you are protected. And again, this is the protection for today, the protection for right now. And as it relates to insurance integration, there's a few ways to go about this, because there's many different types of insurance or an integration that can be used, especially as it relates to all of these products. And so what does that toolkit look like? What does that protection process for today, what does that structure initially need to be? It can look like a trust to keep your assets private and protected in the short term. It can, again, be a limited liability company or an S Corp or a C Corp to shield your personal assets and separate your liability. But in addition to that, it can also be insurance. Don't downplay the power that insurance has on being able to protect you from liens, tax liens and risk and such, and also title planning. Who controls what? Who are your beneficiaries? And God forbid, if something would happen to you, who's next in line to be able to follow the direction that was identified? And as it relates to insurance, understanding how life insurance plays a role. Most people, when we talk about life insurance, I know not for those of you who've been following this channel for a while, but when we talk about life insurance, we're actually thinking death insurance, meaning if something happens to me, there's a death benefit that pays out to my beneficiaries. But life insurance is also liquid protection, meaning it's an estate. Life insurance in general, if it's properly designed, properly structured, life insurance is one of the most legislatively protected asset classes that you could possibly have. Meaning, if done right, that life insurance based product will protect you from lawsuits, liens, creditors, even individuals who are trying to come after you. So the idea behind life insurance is it's an easy action to take to be able to build growth and protection inside of your process. So again, there's not a whole lot of effort required other than making sure the life insurance product that you have is properly structured and is being held by by a company that in most cases a mutual life insurance company that's been around 100+ years, because they have the I'll call it the track record to make sure that whatever you've initiated or put your money in will be there for the life of. So estate tax shield, inheritance balancing, and also the immediate liquidity, the ability to be able to leverage and use when you need to be able to pay bills, use as income. God forbid, if something happens to you, having the right structure for long-term care or terminal or chronic illness. All of those pieces it's a large factor. It's a simplified but large factor for you to be able to put yourself in a position to be able to handle what may come. And even though life insurance is state regulated in most cases, many provide, even though it's different by state, life insurance is one of those tools that can easily be used to allow you the protection to be guarded against being sued. To be guarded against creditors coming after you. So again, my only point there is using or leveraging life insurance is a quick way to be able to put yourself in a position to where at least you're protected from what may come from that perspective. The $1 million risk. So what happens when, you got a question, sweetheart?
No, I just wanted to jump in here because I think for a lot of people that might feel overwhelming. Like even just that amount of information, it's like, whoa, okay, I thought you guys were going to make this easier. I think there's We've got it chunked into segments so that we can break things down in different ways. So what happens for those who don't protect themselves?
Right.
All of those things that were just covered were all the risks for reasons why you protect yourself. Well, the one thing, I don't know why I didn't make it in there, it's protecting yourself against the people who you think you're doing all this for. I mean, that's one. It's not just your business. It's not just the risk of being sued or something like that. There are far more risks than not being protected. But this is, I think, where the information or the lack of information is robbing families, draining families dry. Some of those fun facts are in regards to the $30 million a year that is drained out in probate from families.
Oh, trust me, we'll get there.
And we are going to get there, yeah. But the idea that, I have a will, you will end up draining your family's fortune or potential fortune if you think a will is good enough. I don't know if you guys heard that drum hit. Okay, carry on.
Thanks, sweetheart. So, to your point though, what happens if you don't? What happens if you? What happens if you don't protect your assets? And the reality of it is, you can build $1 million bank and lose it all with one trip and fall from a renter, right? It's making sure that the safeguards are in place such that that doesn't happen. And so what we wanted to do is just kind of walk through a couple of examples. One is what it looks like from a family that is not protected compared to a family that is. And to kind of just step through this a little bit, we've got the Johnson family who, age 35, did everything right? Got the right business in place, provide or contributing to their company's retirement account. And again, on that sole proprietorship journey, the issue with just having a self-directed 401k or just having your basic 401k with your employer is, the question is, how is it structured? What's being invested in it? And how can it support you going forward? And they've got that rental property that's in place, whether it's personal or business-wise, doesn't matter, but it's 35 years of age. And I talk to a lot of clients who are in this space where they have the right pieces. It's just making sure that those pieces are working together or aligned or structured properly to be able to compensate for what you need. One of the growing blind spots as you age is, what does that succession plan look like? And are you structured correctly to make sure that the actions that you're taking won't all of a sudden falter if something were to happen? But in this case, you have no will, no trust, no power of attorney, and you're continuing to muddle along as though everything is going to be okay. You know the saying, I'll get to it at some point. Right now, I'm still building my legacy. Right now, I'm still focused on making sure my business is functioning properly, or I'm putting all of the return that I'm making from my business back into my business so that it can continue to grow.
Right. And what somebody's saying in that moment is, I'll do it when I feel comfortable doing it. That's what they're actually saying. And the problem is, most people remain unprotected because they don't feel comfortable with this information.
Exactly.
Not only with the information, they don't feel comfortable having a conversation about this because they don't know enough to know to participate in the conversation. And so until they have like a baseline of information, and true or untrue, tell me if this is you watching right now. If you don't have a baseline of information to go into the conversation, then it's hard to trust what the person who you're talking to is saying, right? Because you're just trusting that whatever they're telling you is true, when this is your future. This is protecting you. If you get this wrong and you didn't know, but you agreed to it, this is freaks people out, right? So this part right here is so common. This is more than 80% of Americans who are sitting here unprotected or thinking that they're protected. And even the agreements inside of their structures could contradict and break the protection. It's crazy. When you don't know what you don't know, that's not going to be you, because you're here today with us. Carry on.
So again, sole proprietorship, no legal protection, have your basic 401k without any trust structure. You got your rental property. And again, you've been muddling along as though, hey, I will get to it when I get to it. Right now, I'm focused on building my business. And again, it only takes that one action, that one business lawsuit. What happens at that one juncture? They're coming after everything. That tenant that trips and fall on either the snow wasn't removed during the winter, they tripped and fall up the steps, whatever the issue might be, that one tenant can cost you your nest egg in the blink of an eye. And so it's understanding that, okay, the retirement funds are now depleted based off the results of whatever the lawsuit might be based off what the tenant has. And now you're spending the remaining years getting back to nominal, just trying to get yourself back in a position to where you can comfortably retire, that you can comfortably put yourself in a position to where you can at least stop working at some point. But your assets are insufficient, and as far as there being an ability for wealth transfer, because those assets were pillaged by whatever that lawsuit related issue might have been, whether it's creditors or renters or whatever the case might be, you find yourself in a position to where you're just trying to survive. And even with being, let's say you hit that age 75 or older, and even with having something at play, whether it's the primary residence that you're just trying to pass down, without the right structure in place, what happens? Well, God forbid, if something happens to you, we are headed to probate. We're headed to probate, and what most don't realize, probate is a public action, meaning when you go into probate, not only is it happening and everyone can see it, now creditors, there's an opportunity for creditors to then prey upon you for what you've been able to accumulate over time and what's being passed down to you. Family finances are frozen during that period. Once you head into probate, your family finances are frozen for a period of, I think it's 9 to 18 months in some cases. Heavy estate taxes, which causes a diminish in your inheritance. And also, in a lot of cases, to make it through probate in that process, those who are inheriting whatever those assets are forced to sell just to cover those expenses. And again, this is all because, again, you did the right thing in focusing on taking the actions to build the assets, but without the right structure in place, you're leaving it to chance. You're leaving it to the possibility and or the opportunity that something may occur.
Yeah, and let's stay there for just a moment where the family is now realizing all of this. They are just now learning. They are today years old when they learn what is and is not available to them and what the process is. Oh, you have this, but you can't have it, right? You can look at it, but you can't have it. And in addition to that, you've heard of people who talk about flipping real estate. You've heard of people who are into the assisted living community, self-storage. There's all kinds of real estate communities that have a specific focus. Have you heard of probate real estate community? If you haven't, just know that they are there. It's not a popular one, just simply because of what it's doing, but for those who can stomach it, it is highly profitable. And this is what they do. They are able to, it's completely legal, no different than fire or taxes, right? Going in and purchasing property for unpaid taxes. They're able to go in, and because this is public information now, keep this in mind for people who update their will, who think that their will is going to hold up. You will end up in probate. That's what a will means. Just mark that in. Will means will end up in probate, okay? Without a trust. When you pass away, now there's like a public announcement. Think of it like an auction, right? Here's all of your information now, and it's public. So now not only does the public know what you had, they know who is going to get it, right? Who's in line to get it. So imagine all the opportunists who now, the Johnson family is now being targeted, literally targeted. Now imagine how hard you've worked to build and create wealth to be able to pass and transfer it on. And you can't educate them fast enough beyond the grave to then protect them from all of the people who know what they are about to have access to. And this is the part right here, because they may think, well, this is another opportunity. This person contacted me. Now I have another opportunity. Some of them are just opportunists, right? And they wouldn't have that information if you had a trust, because you have anonymity.
That's it.
You have privacy. It's not published in the same way. These people do not have access. There aren't records going out or announcements essentially to these what will we call them?
Predators.
Yeah, predators. Yeah, it is preying, but it's profitable and it's legal. That's the part, is it's completely legal. It's not illegal to do this to families.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what would it look like if we put some of that structure in place? If we follow this exact same example with a different family,
yeah.
what does it look like if some of that structure is in place?
Yeah. That's all right. Let's take a look.
And so to that, we want to jump into the Robinson family. And again, same age, same I'll call it process as it relates to the assets being identified, but launch a business using an LLC structure, established a family bank using a secure compound interest account, even created a revocable trust such that the secure compound interest account that was created can even live in. And then as you age, you realize your structure needs to grow with you. Even though you started with an LLC, you started with a secure compound interest account, and you even started with a trust in place, as you get older, as your asset starts to grow, you realize that maybe that structure needs to look a little bit different. So we move into, from that revocable living trust into a legacy trust. And so we dropped then that life insurance-based product into the legacy trust, and we focused on education. We focused on making sure that those in our circle of trust, again, when we're talking about a family bank, I'm not just talking about you, your spouse, and your kids. It's that family trust of individuals, and we focus on making sure that, God forbid, if something were to happen, we are able to pass on that knowledge and that information. And as you age, as you get older, any occurrence that may come about, that same business lawsuit that may happen, what are they able to access? What are they able to pierce? How far are they able to go? And in truth, that rental property lawsuit would be settled through, in most cases, insurance. Again, oversimplified, but the point is, having structure in place puts you in a position such that you're not impacted by issues like lawsuits or renters getting hurt or accidents or malpractice or equipment failing or malfunctioning. And as you get older, these vehicles that you put in place earlier using your cash flow start to produce and build passive income that allows you to then supplement as income for yourself in retirement, or you can use it to purchase other assets as well. And as children are born, the trust ends up opening up policies on the newborn children, and you're placing them also in a position such that when it's time for college or whatever those life events may be, you created the structure 25 years ago such that they are taken care of if something were to happen. And then, God forbid, something happens to you. Probate. Is probate an issue as it relates to a structure like this when you have the right trust in place? And the answer is no. Probate is avoided. So there's no court activity, no delays, no public exposure, because in most cases you also have the anonymity associated with it. And then tax-free distributions. When you are structured correctly, the idea is to make sure that any distributions coming from the assets that are liquidated are not placed in a position where there's some capital gains or any other tax implication related. So making sure that you're structured such that any distributions created by the passing of the grantors of these situations is done so in a tax-free fashion. And then therefore, with the education around what was done earlier and the receipt of the assets that's being distributed over time, you're putting your family in a position to keep this machine going, to allow it to be able to continue to function within itself. So if we were to just look at the two holistically, and I'll zoom in, but I just want to give you a good solid view. If we were to just compare the two, there's family with structure, family without. What does that look like? and going item by item. If a parent passes away unexpectedly, when you have the right structure in place, you're covered by whatever those trust instructions would be. Whereas as it relates to the Johnson family, we are talking about probate. We're talking about emergency court action to be able to access whatever the assets are or access whatever the dollars need to be able to pay for whatever the costs are that are generated, or even to be able to continue whatever the business might be. And then the probate process. With the trust structure or the proper structure in place, you're protected. Again, it's a private transition. It is not open to the public. You can't see what is or isn't happening. And just so, as I mentioned before, there's about a 6 to 18 month delay as it relates to going through that probate process. Assets being accessible immediately, meaning, God forbid something happens, how quickly can assets, distributions from assets happen to be able to pay for whatever that impact might be? Well, depending on how your structure is created as it relates to the trust, those trust activities immediately take place, meaning they're timed. They could be based off a date, based off an activity, or based off whatever the instructions are. And because you're going into probate, what ends up happening to those assets in a family without structure as it relates to the Johnson family, those assets are then frozen. Again, you cannot access them until that probate process is over. Asset protection from creditors. And I think this is a piece that tends to get missed because the individual that passed, those creditors, you think it's just in relation to the creditors that were maybe coming after the individual who's no longer here. But because this probate process is public, what if you are the one receiving some of these assets being passed down and those creditors find out and they end up coming after you? So again, it's absolutely one of those predatory related actions that, again, if you're properly structured, the trust protects you against that. Whereas if there's no structure in place, you're absolutely vulnerable to lawsuits and claims like that. And then tax planning. In most cases, that structure allows clarity around what that estate tax process needs to be and what assets are impacted and what aren't. And then whereas with the lack of structure, all of your assets are exposed. And so they're exposed not only to what might be capital gains, but they're exposed to all aspects, all taxation from most cases. And then beneficiaries being clearly identified or clearly defined. From a trust perspective, you got the clear roles, who takes on what position, that God forbid if something were to happen to the grantor, like who steps into what position, and you have the succession planning for what happens beyond the initial, I'll call it, level of change. So you have that succession planning on what your grandkids or your great grandkids or their kids, their role would be inside of a process like this. Whereas without that structure, this could be very unclear. And this is what causes the infighting. This is where brothers or family members end up fighting each other over what they thought or what they expected to receive out of this process. And then again, as we mentioned, that probate process is absolutely public. And so public record exposure is something that absolutely happens when that structure doesn't exist, but you're protected from it as it relates to, when you have the proper structure in place as it relates to a trust or even an LLC for that factor, as far as what is or isn't impacted by public exposure. And then family conflict risk. When you identify the roles and responsibilities within the trust structure, it minimizes what that looks like. I'm not saying it eliminates it, but it absolutely places the family in a position to where at least it's minimized because it's been clearly defined as to who plays what role and how the assets are being distributed. Whereas, again, probate usually brings a high potential for dispute, a high potential for people to, one, not understand their roles, or not understand how things are being liquidated and the role that each individual plays. And last but not least, the ability to transfer wealth smoothly. This structure allows for seamless transfer compared to delays and cost and also confusion. And as you stated very, very well, sweetheart, Probate is very public, very expensive, and exhausting. Whereas trust can be quiet, fast, and quite private. And so, as it relates to probate, we've kind of hinted to it and we talked about it on its surface, but what is it? Well, as a death occurs, what ends up happening is the assets are frozen. This is a court process that can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months, and in some cases longer, depending on how much of a dispute there may or may not be. And then you have those predators that come. Matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, sweetheart, this is a $30 billion industry to identify or to chase. You think ambulance chases are bad, to kind of focus on going after the families who are going through this process because it is so public.
Yeah, and not only that, but the majority of families end up liquidating assets just to get out of this process because it can last years sometimes, especially if somebody is like laying a stake to your or claim to your property.
Right.
So what this could mean is you're married to somebody and it wasn't very clear what assets did and didn't belong to you, and they had a previous spouse. Who's to say it's yours or it's theirs if they have documentation that might suggest otherwise, right? It could be that you got remarried and there's an issue with that. It could be that this was an asset that was passed down to your family, let's say your parent or something. Now you're about to get it, but their brother or sister, right? Your aunt or your uncle says, "Oh, no. The deal was if he passed away, it got passed to us."
Right.
Okay. So now they're in the mix. But then a couple attorneys get involved and they're like, well, hold on a second. We have a highest bidder. We have someone who feels that they maybe had a lien on something, right? So now they own it. Now this is not just a probate process. Now this is a full-on court case. Now the courts get to decide what happens with all this stuff. And the person who could have cleared all of this up probably just was assuming every day, slept well at night, thinking to themselves, well, they can figure it out. I won't be here. They can figure it out. It's just stuff. So it becomes just stuff. And sometimes people end up liquidating it all, not because they don't want the assets, not because they don't want to grow the machine, not because they don't want leverage. It's not because of that. It's because it is so messy, so tacky, and it has so many strings attached to it at this point because you left it in that condition.
And it's simply to get rid of the headache.
Yeah, they just want to be done. It's emotionally heavy, and some simple language could fix all of that. And we've seen some people, I'm curious at this point, what do you think the difference was if they didn't have to liquidate all the assets because they had a trust in place, a good one? Or like, how much did that cost versus having to liquidate all the assets? How much did they truly lose? If we're talking about families losing everything, meaning generations are set back to zero, right? It's all gone because by the time you've liquidated it, then they probably spent it too, right? They just want to be done. A lot of the times it goes into court fees or legal fees to pay the attorneys through the probate process, so they don't end up with anything.
This process is definitely not free.
Yeah, right. And it's again, it's heavy. So what we hope is that what we can establish first is why this is pillar 4 and 5. Why these two pillars right here, why it's urgent to understand why it's not you got time.
Right.
It's an urgent matter to go and get some structure in place. It's urgent just simply because it's your stuff. It's your hard work. It's your achievements, not somebody else's. But how easy is it for someone to come in just simply because they know the rules better than you and sop it up with a biscuit? That's really what it is. And, but that's not going to happen to you because
You're here.
You're here and we're going to continue on learning. So let's keep going.
But even on that note, the idea then becomes, okay, I'm fine. Why? Because I've got a will, and that will take care of this issue. I don't have to worry about a trust. I don't have to worry about additional structure. Well, the truth around wills in general is that they don't protect. I think you had a pretty good analogy, and I'm sure I'm going to mess it up, but it was like you're leaving a note. A will is similar to leaving a note, whereas a trust or structure around what a trust looks like is more along the lines of the directions on how to actually get to the destination. So if you see the note, or if the note doesn't necessarily hold much weight, but the directions on where to go, how to get there, and what to do once you get there are the piece that really matters. So
yeah, it was saying that the will is the car manual. Right? It's in the glove box, and you could read it if you want to, but you can't drive the car without the keys. Right? You can learn all about the car. That's fine, but you can't actually take it or drive it. You can't own it if you don't have the keys in the title, and the trust is the keys in the title.
Right. So with that being said, and I think we kind of highlighted a few of these. The purpose for wanting a trust or having that right structure in place is based off data. It's not what I think, it's what I know. And that is 70% of wealth is lost by generation 2, 90% by generation 3. So it's making sure this structure is in place so that doesn't happen. And as we discussed, probate takes somewhere between 9 and 18 months just to get through that process. And what ends up happening then is you end up losing 10% of your wealth due to this process, because you were asking kind of what does that cost? And again, if I remember correctly, this is a $30 billion industry, and that's billion with a B. And so that this $30 billion industry is there such to be able to prey on the individuals going through this process that lack or don't have the structure. And so when we compare a will to a trust, as it relates to public record, wills are absolutely public record, whereas a trust, you're protected. Can wills be contested? Meaning, just because you have a will in place, does it hold you or anyone else accountable to whatever those actions of the will are? No. A will can absolutely be contested, whereas very rarely, again, if it's incorrectly structured, possibly, but in most cases, a trust very rarely can be contested. And again, we talked about this earlier. With not having a trust in place can cause your assets to be frozen as you go through this process. So within a will, what happens to those assets, even though you have a will in place, that does not stop or prevent your assets from being frozen, whereas a trust, you're protected. And as far as how easy is it for your heirs? The ability to be able to transition to what the next stage of life needs to be, or how those assets are being distributed. With the will, again, it's a manual. It's there. It's available, but it doesn't necessarily hold the necessary weight possible for you to be able to take action because you're missing the key. And that trust is that key. And then scammer exposure, meaning the same way people are preying on individuals because this is public record, it causes the will that you thought was the right thing to do to be able to make sure your family is taken care of is in essence putting your family at risk, whereas the trust adds that additional added protection. And again, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we've talked a lot about trust, but what I want to get into next is what type of trust, because there's hundreds of them out there. So if you don't know what you're looking for, you can get yourself in trouble. But go ahead, sweetheart.
I want to just bring this part up because we have a couple comments in the chat right now talking about, look, I don't have a spouse. I don't have kids. I don't have anyone that I would be entrusting my assets to. So why is this important for me? I'm so glad you asked.
Well, right, because we're headed down that path, but I'll give you the answer to the test now. When we talk about creating a family bank, we made it very, very clear. We're not talking about you and your kids or you and your parents and grandparents. It is about that circle of trust that you have. And as it relates to this structure, that structure applies to those individuals that you identified as being the group that you want to be able to go tackle those goals with. Because creating a family bank is much more about we are in a state where we can't do this on our own. We need each other. We need the support of one another. So that family bank allows us to be able to do that. But that family bank is for naught if it's not protected.
We were filling out our paperwork when we started to come across questions about what if one of us or both of us were incapacitated? What would then happen? Who would be making decisions for us? And I thought to myself while I was filling this out, what about somebody who isn't married and doesn't have kids or family members that they could assign this role to, or they could trust to assign this role to? And I thought to myself, well, what does happen in that scenario? What would happen? If you are in some sort of like hospice or long-term care facility, do you think that they are going to make the best decisions for you and your assets to make sure that you have the best care and that your wealth lasts for you to be able to maintain and obtain the best care? Do you think that that's the decision that they're going to make? Or do you think that they're going to make the decision that makes them the most profit and may not benefit you long term? Your trust, even as a single person with no kids and no family to trust to make decisions, no power of attorney, you can still assign someone else who is not in a profitable position or an opportunistic position to make those decisions for you, or they're just facilitating the decisions you've already made. Then that's really what a trust is. They don't get to make the decisions necessarily. They're only managing and carrying out the decisions that you've already made. So for those who may be thinking to themselves, well, I'm not going to get one because I'm not married, or I'm not going to get one because I don't plan on having kids. I don't plan on adopting kids. I don't plan on kids or family. I don't want to just start reining people in. Circle of trust. Not with it, Donnell. I am my circle of trust. Maybe that's you. And maybe you're sitting there thinking to yourself, it's a waste of time. You are still worth protecting. Hard stop. You are worth protecting. You are worth protecting you. And there's nobody who is going to have your best interest at heart more than you. And that's why, even though we could sit here and say that this is a family bank, this is about for families only, or we could say a lot of things. But the truth is, it doesn't matter if you have a family or not, if you're completely by yourself. There are a couple of trends that are out here. But the point is, whether it's for your family or not, the point is it's you. You are getting to make these decisions, and someone else is only getting to carry them out for you. Yeah. So that's the point of all of this. It really is protection, and it's protection on everything that you have achieved. It's protection on you securing your future financially, right? That financial stability, it's protecting that as well. And it's just your ability to do that without anybody else derailing that or making decisions and putting you last when you should be first when it comes to your assets,
And along those same lines, because I have several clients that fit this narrative, and that is, hey, I don't have any descendants. I don't plan on having any kids, but I've got my secure compound interest account that I'm focused on making sure that it's compounding and building for me so that when I need it, it's accessible to me to be able to live and use as retirement income. Okay, awesome. Who's your beneficiary? And they go, oh, let me think. I would really like for my beneficiary to be my best friend because she is actually the family that I got to choose. And
Yeah.
so I want my beneficiary to be my best friend.
And if she's listed on the will, she's not.
Well, hold on, it
Somebody
gets
else,
worse.
yeah.
Because when we're applying for that skill, when we're applying for that leveraged IUL to be able to generate and build wealth, you learn in that moment, she can't be your beneficiary.
Dumb.
So what do? Well, in most cases, a lot of my clients end up creating their trust so that they can dictate who will be their beneficiary if something were to happen to them.
Boom.
And I've got a lot of clients, again, they're single, no kids, they want the growth, and they want to insure their best friend's daughter or have their best friend's daughter be the beneficiary. You can't.
But you can now.
But you can if you have the right structure in place to be able to identify. So I go back to, this is absolutely relevant to the family bank discussion, even if your family looks different.
Oh,
This is about that circle of trust. This is about those individuals who have your back. Here's an opportunity to be able to get better aligned and get better, I'll call it better designed, such that you guys can don't have to worry about what this looks like, God forbid, if anything were to happen.
and for all of the fur parents out there who have fur babies,
Thing.
man, this is more than trending for people to have pets instead of like human children. They're the same thing to them.
That's right.
You can't tell them any different.
That's right.
Sequoia, I'm talking to you in the chat. She's got fur babies. And I'm going to tell you right now that people who have fur babies, whether you have human kids or not, doesn't matter. You get to decide what kind of care they also will have access to in the event that something happens to you. So it's not when you get old, oh, maybe they wouldn't make it. It's what if something happens to you tomorrow? What would happen to them? And those are some of the questions that get to be answered. Those are some of the peace that you get to have going to sleep at night, knowing that if tomorrow was the last day, you have a plan.
Right.
And that's the point, that's the anxiety I was completely riddled with, and knowing there's a plan. I understand what to do. I understand who is going to help me. I know that I won't be completely by myself. And I've watched so many people who were unprepared, and now they're in the process of grieving. And in addition to that, right? We've both seen that, Donnell. And that is horrible to witness, but you can't imagine it being you. You don't ever think it's going to be you.
Right.
Right.
At that time.
Right. Yeah. You don't ever think it's going to be you. You think we'll have that conversation. It's just not now. Right.
Young 52. Like we'll be fine.
Yeah. Right. Or somebody else is going to know what to do.
Right.
Yeah. Know where to find all the stuff too, by the way.
I mean, you couldn't look into my binder and see where all of the different, I balance the checkbook every day. Like, you don't know what, like, yeah, I get it. No, trust me. I get it.
Yeah. Well, we could do a workshop on making some binders. I'm down with that. I just got excited thinking about that. Okay. Back to you.
Yep. So, and here's the moral of the story. Like, cause I resonate with you, because when I was going through this stuff, people talk about trust, but I don't get the clarity around what specifically. So there's many different types of trust. And we've identified that, okay, a trust versus a will. Yeah, I get it. Wills just simply mean your family will be going through something a little bit more than you think if you're not structured correctly. So what are the trusts, or when you say trust, what do you specifically mean? And not all trusts are created equal. There are many different types, many different levels of, let's see, hold on, let me do something real quick.
Yeah, I can throw the vibe board up.
No, you're fine.
Nice and big for you.
You're fine. I just want to make sure I got everything in here. So when we talk about trust, there are many different types. You've got your irrevocable trust, you've got a revocable trust. And we'll get into what all of those things mean. You've got your asset protection trust. You've got your life insurance-based trust. And you even have legacy, also not to be confused with dynasty trust. The moral of the story is there are many different types. But which should you focus on? Which one is right for you? And the moral of the story around that is it depends. It depends on your goal. But where do you start? Well, you've got the revocable trust, which is just simply stating, hey, it's a trust that once it's in place, you are able to make adjustments if necessary. So to me, revocable trust are trusts that can grow with you. Meaning you can put yourself in a position such that if you needed to make some adjustments, originally you started with, I'm not having kids, you won't catch me getting married, to things change and now all of a sudden I'm married with 2 children, making sure that you can make the adjustments necessary to be able to fit whatever those life changes are. A irrevocable trust is just basically stating, hey, it's I'm designing this such that it's in a position to where it cannot be changed. So it's guarded against changes in my legacy that may not understand how to handle this wealth that I've placed in front of them. There's guidelines in place to make sure that can happen. And here's the truth. There's a situation where these two may need to coexist. And that's possible as well. To me, asset protection trust, that's where it all starts. Meaning our home, our businesses, whatever those assets are that we care most about. Starting with that asset trust is kind of the beginning. And then the legacy trust and the life insurance trust, this is that vehicle that allows your cash value that's growing inside of those policies that you created to be distributed effectively. So that legacy trust and that life insurance trust, they don't necessarily go together because they're a little bit different. But as it relates to revocable, there's not I'll call it an extensive list of them. We've got the living trust, the joint trust, and the AB trust, which is basically a combination between the two. As it relates to revocable, it's a little bit different. The list is a little bit longer, and I kind of had to do my homework on these as well. From an irrevocable trust perspective, we've got the testamentary trust, special needs trust, a charitable trust, sometimes associated with the charitable remainder trust, the asset protection trust that also lives inside of the irrevocable, the grantor retained annuity trust, short for GRAT, and then the irrevocable life insurance trust, or the ILIT. And again, there's opportunities where all of these speak. All of these can commingle or coexist with each other, but it kind of depends upon your goal as to which one would make the most sense for you. And I want to take a minute here and just spend some time here with the legacy trust. Why does this matter? And how does this legacy trust relate to that family bank? And the idea behind it is this, and there's a lot more words here than I would like, but I wanted to be able to share and read it to you. Because the focus is on the family bank, and again, family, you get to decide what that means. Because family is not just your kids, your grandkids, your grandparents, your parents, your immediate family. That family bank, that family is that circle of trust piece. And so I just wanted to share this with you as it relates to the legacy trust. Whether your goal is to obtain a skill on someone other than yourself. Again, having a life insurance policy on someone other than yourself. Those of you with policies, you know there has to be insurable interest. Insurable interest means there's some dependency, like it's your child. You can have a policy on your parent or grandparent. You can also have a policy on your child or grandchild, but there has to be some type of insurable interest. But with a legacy trust, you're putting yourself in a position to where you can insure someone other than yourself. So this structure allows you to be able to build a true family bank, and you get to define what family looks like. So other than your spouse, minor child, or perhaps creating wealth for posterity, and a legacy trust can also help you accomplish your goal. So in order to achieve the ability to build a trust with individuals other than your immediate family, a legacy trust will allow you to do that. And without a legacy trust owning it, there are significant limitations. There's a whole list of limitations associated with it, but I wanted to highlight this one. And it's typically you're unable to purchase a life insurance policy on someone other than yourself without it, other than a child. So without having a legacy trust, it's very difficult to ensure that circle of trust that we discussed as it relates to it being your family. And ultimately, you would want that legacy trust to protect against or to protect your wealth for your loved ones, and also protect against creditors, lawsuits, bankruptcy, divorce, and or government government aid qualifications, the ability to qualify for government aid. And the purpose of a legacy trust, again, is about control. It's about you having the autonomy and control over your ability to do as you choose with your wealth. And there are definitely layers associated with that legacy trust, and you get to define and identify what that looks like. And then the tax advantage piece. Maybe all is a strong word. Most properly structured cash value life insurance based products, to include insurance trusts, have their tax advantages, and the way they maintain those tax advantages is by making sure that any proceeds that you receive from that trust is leveraged, is a dollar amount that is borrowed against what's happening inside the trust, so that you maintain those tax advantages. Yep. And as it relates to why is a trust so important? What is it about a trust that is the reason behind why you would want this structure in place to begin with? Well, it's the biggest piece for me is that power of anonymity. Again, control everything, but own nothing is the saying that I couldn't get out of my head earlier. And that is, again, you want to have control over those activities, actions, those assets, but you want to make sure that they can't access you. Who's owning these assets? They have no idea. Who's the person behind the veil? Have no idea. And the transfer of those assets are also private. So that privacy shield, ownership obscurity, and the opportunist deterrent, meaning who are the creditors coming after? Well, they don't know who owns the assets, so they're not coming after you. So the reason why is pretty specific. And again, which I'll call it trust should you get? I gave you the entire list. Of that list, which one is right for you? And again, I know most don't like this answer, but it's the truth. It depends. It depends on the goal. It depends on the objective. It depends on your circle of trust. It depends on the ages of the individuals within the circle of trust. It depends on where you are in your life as today, because as a 25, 30-year-old, you have a lot of life left ahead of you, so things may change. So you want the ability to be able to make those adjustments when you need to. For those of us who may be a bit older and have businesses in place and business partnerships, you might have a trust associated with the business specifically, and those relationships, and making sure that that can't impact your family life. So it truly depends. But the key piece is what we've laid out here for you is there's a I'll call it a decent list around what the type of trust would be and which ones may make the most sense. And as we talk about legacy, I do not want to confuse a legacy trust with legacy planning. These are two different things. As it relates to legacy trust, this is about making sure the life insurance-based product you have is structured the way you need, and as the asset is being distributed, you have the right structure in place to be able to distribute things the way that you want. Meaning, again, if you want your beneficiary to be your best friend or a niece or someone who you don't necessarily have insurable interest over, the legacy trust is in place for you to be able to do so. But that does not guard against what that legacy plan needs to be. And so what we wanted to jump into is your legacy. If your legacy plan ends with, hey, I'm leaving assets, I'm leaving money to my family, then you've got some work to do. So that legacy plan is about the structure required to make sure that things are able to transition beyond today. What we've been talking about thus far is, what does that structure need to look like to protect things today? The legacy plan is about, how do we protect things for the future? How do we protect the legacy going forward, God forbid, if I'm not here? How do we make sure the next 500 years are able to benefit from all of the hard work that you've done to build this machine? How do we make sure this machine lasts beyond the next few generations? So that legacy plan is really about creating a blueprint. This is that structure or the actions required for the individuals involved in it. And it's, how is that plan communicated? How are those assets protected? And what is that system? What is that machine that this structure is in? And how does that machine function? And who are the roles? And again, this can be quite daunting, but hopefully what you'll gain in these next few layers is, it's actually not as difficult as you think. The key piece is, take it slow. The key piece is, take it one step at a time, one layer at a time. It's an elephant. We're not here to say you have to bite that elephant, or inhale that elephant in one bite. It's one bite at a time. It's identifying where the opportunities are. And that legacy structure, again, starts with asset protection. And then it's making sure that asset protection is tax efficient. And the mechanisms or the systems in place, you want to make sure the right systems in place so that we prevent waste or prevent loss of the assets as they're generated. And that air protection, meaning as things are transitioned, do we have the right structure in place in case of a divorce or death, or as people are born, or as people transition on? Who takes on the role of grantor or co-trustee? Like, what does that structure looks like? What does the board look like today? And what are those adjustments? What are the adjustments that need to happen as it relates to that board is the key. So, and as I mentioned, this is not meant to be done all at once. Start small. The first step is, what does that basic trust look like? What are those basic assets that you want to make sure are protected, God forbid, if something happened to you today? And then as the assets shift, as the assets change, we update the trust to include those. And so we change the titles and we move assets as they need to be under that structure. And we get the right insurance. Whether it's insurance on the individual, insurance on the business, insurance on the individuals in the business, like keyman policies. So again, the type of life insurance, please spend some time with me and let's discuss what that structure needs to look like. But it's making sure the right asset, your assets are properly insured to be able to allow you to be able to allow the machine to continue to function, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. And then the education piece. Making sure those who are part of your board, those who are in your immediate circle of trust, understand the actions that you've taken and understand their role in this process. And sweetheart, I think this is a huge opportunity for us as well to make sure that as we build this machine, making sure the people around us in our circle of trust, the people in our family bank, understand what those steps are and how to access them. So it's making sure the rules are in place. And so I think a few Loom videos might work, right? Kind of stepping through what that process would be. But the moral of the story is making sure that we have the right education process in place for our family to be able to make sure things are transitioning effectively. And so what does that look like though? So when you appoint these roles, what does that math look like over time? And it's identifying the roles, the grantors, the trustee, the successor trustee, the guardian, the executor, the power of attorney, and who plays what role and how do those roles transition? Is it required? Is a backup required? And who specifically is in that place today? Who controls making the decision as to what individuals fit in these buckets? So it's identifying the key roles in your machine, in your system, in your trust to be able to make these types of decisions. And what assets? What are the assets that belong in this process? And do we need to identify how and when that a transfer may be needed? So we're talking real estate, bank accounts, investments like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, again, life insurance based products, retirement accounts, business interests or businesses in general, and digital assets. And I think this is a big one for today, is understanding how those digital assets also fit into this process as well, to also include vehicles. And understanding whether or not transfer is required and or needed. And again, this may be different depending on what your goal is and what your structure looks like, and making sure you understand if change or additional structure is required and or needed, how do we slide that information into the trust as it's being built, or making sure we have a revocable trust to be able to make that adjustment as needed. See anything on that? Why? I think this kind of speaks to why that's important as well, and that is your protection and legacy plan, that time frame around how long it takes to be able to accomplish this. Because again, this can feel quite overwhelming. But the truth is, in order to create that basic structure as it relates to getting, the basic asset trust in place, it could be a 30-day process, meaning you sitting down and identifying where your vulnerable assets are located, or what are those assets that are required to go into a trust like this. Another 90 days to establish whether or not this is a revocable or irrevocable trust, what type of trust is needed. What are the assets we need to make sure are in that trust as well? And then another 180 days to just make sure everything is aligned. Another 180 days to make sure the right structure in place for that first layer, that first tier of putting a trust in place, and then annually reviewing to make sure that any as adjustments, as life as things happen, as changes occur within the structure of that circle of trust, we take those. Well, we take the proper steps to make sure those actions make it into that trust, and then the process starts all over again. The 30, 90, 180, and then the annual review. So I guess my question for you is, what's stopping you? What's preventing you from moving forward on being able to take action with a trust, whatever, well, again, whatever that structure might be, whatever that foundation, or where you, what are those issues? What are those things that's impacting your ability to just get started? Is it that it's too complex? How about expense? Have you guys assessed how much it costs to create a lot of this structure? And again, I think there's a TikTok trend around this as well. So everyone is offering a consultation or a basic foundation for what trust should be. And are you one of those who, not yet, I've got time. I'm in my 30s, I'm in my early 40s. I'm just focused on making sure I've got the right assets to be able to put into a process like this. I'm just not ready yet. Or you feel like it's not needed, it's not required at this time. Or better yet, I just don't know how. I am missing the steps, the tools, the process, the structure to help me make an educated decision as to what this looks like. What is it that's impacting you and your ability to be able to move forward? And what we wanted to offer to everyone is an opportunity to close that gap. So the ability to complete your family bank, it starts with protection first, and then that structure matters, and then you have to take the action necessary to be able to lock it in, make sure the right assets are in it, and making sure the right structure is in place so that you don't all of your hard work is for naught. So here are the steps. If you are wanting access to this guide that we've put together for free for you to be able to access the steps required to be able to build your family bank, you have to first start with this. I'm going to need for you guys to go to @self-directed Stidhams on YouTube. And I need for you to, what's the word, sweetheart?
Subscribe.
Subscribe. That's the word I could not get out. Go to @self-directed Stidhams on YouTube and subscribe. That's the additional channel that we talked about last week that we've created. And again, you can't access this guide unless you go there.
Yes, they can.
I know, I'm just kidding. And then, moral of the story is go to selfdirected.info/live, scroll down there. I think once you get beyond the HELOC guide, you'll find the family bank guide that we've created. Sweetheart, if you want to add anything more to that, selfdirected.info/live, be able to get it. I would appreciate it though, if you went to @self-directed Stidhams and subscribe, because we are in the midst of that. We're going to use that channel we're going to place there the bite-sized piece of communication that we have, instead of the large lives that tend to be a bit much for people to handle. What we wanted to do is put these shorter form videos in a place so that you can then identify for those who need this content, give them a place to go. So
yeah, so like this whole family bank series will be chopped up. The segments that we've talked about will be chopped up into separate videos, so it'll be easier to find, one, and they'll be easier to share. So that's what we hope. We hope will continue to happen. Right now, we're just barely getting started over there, so we do appreciate your support, and we would love your feedback. Like, Absolutely. Is it tracking? Is this worth it? Do you prefer this or that? Some people have given us that feedback, and they said, "Look, please, we can't do the 2 hours. Can you please cut all the rest of the stuff out?" But then we love showing up and doing it this way, because we know that there are people who really do appreciate it this way. You know, it's harder to be like this on YouTube because so many other people, if they mess up, right, they pre-record everything. So if they mess up, they get to re-record it or they get to edit it. There's nothing that we have done. I don't think we've done we've done a couple of pre-recorded videos. But the majority, a few or many hundreds of 2-hour live streams where it is just us being ourselves. And there's no editing, there's no taking it back, there's no recutting it. It is just it's out there in the ether. And this is us. Yeah. So we don't get to do it any other way. And we do appreciate that because we feel like it's kind of real this way. We get to just talk about it and you guys get to jump in the chat and we get to form connections and community and meet other people who are on the same journey. That in itself is valuable. But if you're a replay viewer and this is something maybe you put on in the back while you're just working or whatnot, your feedback is still extremely valuable. And perhaps we can figure out a way to find the best of both worlds. But so far, what we just decided was it was worth it to serve as many as we can.
Right. To do both.
Yeah.
Right, do both.
Yeah. So, and Jay, by the way, I would love your feedback on this download. So again, just go here, selfdirected.info/live. We try to make it easy. Just you go here and then you can click on the button that will take you to where you can download this form.
And there's a lot of resources there.
Yeah, there's the critical HELOC questions if you haven't gone through that to ask your lender. But this particular guide not only will help you to gather up all of the assets, start asking the questions with your family. Like, look, I'm going through this process. Who would I trust? Who would I want into in this position? Or maybe it's just asking yourself, like, what would I want to happen, right? So that you're planning forward. My favorite part of this whole thing, though, definitely the glossary of terms, okay? Because I had to look up some stuff. I was like, what the heck does that mean? Per capita, per strepus, whatever. I was trying to pronounce it, and I was like, no, I got to Google it. Just understanding what those are not common terms is my point.
Well, and the idea is, as large as this may seem, the goal is just to provide you with a tool to help this not feel as large.
Exactly.
A lot of the main reason why people don't get started is the overwhelm piece. So what we hope this guide will allow you to do is not feel as overwhelmed. And again, also feel free to jump on my calendar if you find yourself going down the path of that guide and you have some questions. Please feel free to jump on my calendar. I'd be happy to assist where I can in kind of understanding or providing more clarity if needed.
Rob says, as someone who experienced setting up trusts, please take your time. Another major challenge is finding banks that will support trust accounts. It's a great point. I will say this, though. We are going to have the firm that we chose them not just because they were able to support us and our needs, but I had to come up with all of these questions to start interviewing firms that offer these services, and not just firms that offer these services, because there's people that offer these services as well. Here's the number one question that helped me make my decision. One, could they help serve our, here are some questions, but the last one is the most important one that helped me make my decision. Some important questions for me were, could they help our community? Were they a service that could handle the volume of us sending people to them if we liked them? We don't do affiliate deals. We don't do compensation deals. We don't do that over here. So if we were going to choose them, could we trust that we went through the process so we know somebody else could go through that same process, right? With confidence. Okay. A lot of them we had to say no. We would not want to. If we can't even get through this part of the ordeal and we don't have a lot of confidence, it doesn't matter really what you say past this point, because we don't want anybody else to have this type of experience, right? So that's first and foremost. Two was, how do you educate along the way? Who's there? Is this something where you just provide the service and they should already know these things? Or if somebody had questions, how much time do you have available to then, provide this service and educate people? Okay, do you have the time? So they did. The last one, though, was important to us to be able to talk about this and share, It was, what happens if one of us passes before the other? What happens at that point? And is there someone from your team who is going to, like, let's say I'm the survivor. I'm going to be a mess, hot mess, a melted mess, puddles. Who's going to help pick me up and hold my hand through this process? Is there going to be somebody? Because I would love to believe I'm a strong person and I got it all together. But let's just say I'm going to plan for the worst, right? I'm not going to have it all together. Who's going to be that support? And how is it just unique to me? Is this an extra thing, a service or whatnot? Or do you just do this for everybody?
Right.
And when we heard, no, we do this for everybody, and they understood what that moment is like in someone's timeline, that became a no-brainer for me, because not everybody provides that type of service. And I would hope that somebody's mother, kids, spouse, brother, sister, whoever it is, would have somebody else there to help them stand up strong through that type of process. That was really important to me. But my favorite part about the download is that I have at least 15 or more questions that are organized into categories that you could then ask when you're interviewing someone. So this isn't about promoting anybody, and no, we've not listed anybody in this download. Right. It's just for you, okay? But what we are going to do is we're going to provide them an opportunity to do like a Zoom call or whatnot. I think the live stream, we offered them to come on our live stream, and that kind of freaked them out a little bit. So we're going to do a Zoom opportunity because they're very familiar with Zoom calls. And that way you guys can unmute and ask the questions there. And if you would like to do that, then join in the Facebook group and we'll talk about it there. That would be a good place for that. Okay, so we've talked about the trust. We've talked about protection. We've talked about legacy planning. We are now in pillar 5 of 7 of the family bank. So again, if you haven't subscribed here and there so that you will have faster access to all of this, we'll also make sure that we create some sort of a landing page on our website that will also house this information in an organized fashion so that it's easier to share as well. And we've already started working on that. But what we hope is you'll give us some feedback on these downloads. So whether if it's the HELOC questions, if in regards to setting up your assets and understanding how to utilize your leverage in the best ways, or it's this in terms of protection. We want your feedback to make sure that it is easy, just because we're assuming it's easy to understand, or we've presented it in a easy to chew type of fashion. Your opinion matters to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. You ready to come back?
Yep. Let's do it.
All right. Oh, here we go. Mm-hmm.
Which is 300.
No, I did the. Yeah, there it is. Okay. I don't think we've had any questions like with a Q in front.
Yeah, I would think that.
Oh, hey. Oh, sorry, my bad.
No problem. I would think that this is one of those topics where it's almost just like school. I'm receiving this information, and unless there's someone out there who has a pretty good solid handle on trust, this is one of those where you just kind of absorb the information, and all of a sudden the questions start popping up later once you're able to digest it. And that's where I think this guide comes into play.
Yeah.
You guys accessing the guide to be able to just take what we've talked through today and then walk through the areas of opportunity in the guide. And I think the piece that you kind of mentioned is the one for me, and it's the questions.
Yeah.
It's, what do I ask when I'm sitting in front of these individuals? They're trying to sell me something. Like, I don't care who it is. They're going to try to sell you something. Well, it's what are those questions you should be asking to make sure you're at least identifying what are those pieces you want to make sure are identified, in this process for you. So I think that's the key.
Yeah, Lolo. Hi, by the way, we haven't seen your name in the chat for a minute. So welcome. Glad you were able to join in. She says, the company I chose actually had a free will and trust class. We could ask any questions we had. That's amazing. Yeah. What's interesting is there are a lot of people out here who provide those services. And while they might say that they do something like this, trying to nail them down or get a coherent answer from them if they're in a rush or they just don't have the availability. It's we're in a different world now, so maybe that there's more people doing this than not. We just weren't able to find a whole lot that did. So that's great. I'm glad to hear that there's more out there. I don't see any more questions. If you have a question though, put it in the chat with the Q in front so we can quickly identify it. This is overwhelming for a lot of people. So I'm sure we're not going to have a lot of questions.
And here's the thing. So we've talked about cash flow. We've talked about leverage. We've talked about understanding how to make that asset grow. We focus today on protection for today, protection for tomorrow. Where are we headed? Like what's left? Well, now it's about education.
Right.
You've identified the cash flow. You found your leverage. You've put that money to work. You've protected it for today and tomorrow, but now it's tomorrow. How do you make sure that the machine that you have running continues to run for the next 500 years? Well, you can put all the protection in place that you want. That doesn't necessarily mean that the individuals who are taking the reins understand how to use it. And as we talk about this subject, the show Succession stays in my head. It's like just because the kids inherited everything at their fingertips doesn't mean they understand how to use it. So it's, what does that education look like? How do you hold hands with the individuals within your circle of trust to make sure that they own it just like you do? And that it's easy to understand and own just like you do. Like, what are those steps? What are those stages? So it's about education. And then it's about the unity. Like, it's making sure that the right culture, that you're fostering the right culture within this circle of trust to sustain this legacy for years to come.
Yeah.
So that's where we're headed. We're headed with education and the culture, legacy.
And again, we're not saying that family is
right.
You're married into it or you were born into it. Sometimes family you pick out for yourself, right? I like to say friends are the family that we get to pick out for ourselves. I was mentioning in the chat, and I'm just going to mention it here, Retirement House. Are you guys following Retirement House on social media? If you're not, you should just do it because it's like great, funny. They're so funny and entertaining. But they are a great example of people who have joined together to almost like form this union, this bond, this agreement that they're going to take care of each other, right? All we got is here. We want to enjoy life. We want to continue to do this and live life to the fullest. And so here we are. We're bringing all of our gifts forward. And now we are the circle of trusts in a sense, right? Circle of trust can mean a lot of different things, but it also could mean a circle of trust all inside of another trust.
Right.
And there can be trust insides of trust. This is, as soon as we started unpacking this, I was like, wow, this is fascinating to me because nobody was talking about trust when I was growing up. Nobody was talking about that. Most people are more familiar with the will, right? So once you go through the process or you see someone go through the probate process, you realize
this ain't it.
Something is going to have to be different, right? Especially when you realize that the person who essentially didn't mean for this mess to happen.
Right.
And sometimes it is heartbreaking because they just didn't know what they didn't know. That's it.
I see it all the time. And it could be something as simple as an inherited IRA. That sounds like, based off the conversation we've been having today, an inherited IRA seems rather simple.
Right.
Mom had an IRA she had been funding for years. She was living off of it, and she just left me and my brother $250,000. You think you're inheriting $250,000, only to learn what you can do with it, what you can't do with it, how it can be used. And hold on, no one told me, no one informed me that I didn't have the autonomy to do what I want. You're actually held responsible for whatever the process was your mom put in place. And and by the way, that $250,000 has to be liquidated within a certain period of time. But who had this discussion? Who told me this? So it's something as simple as an inherited IRA. You put it in the right structure, you do have a bit more autonomy. You do have a bit more flexibility and access and the ability to do other things. But if you didn't know it, if mom didn't know it, she thought she was setting you up for success, but what she ended up giving you was an asset that you quickly liquidated, quickly took the tax and penalty hit because you just wanted the headache to go away.
Yeah, it's the emotional weight.
Yeah.
That's the part. And that's not what we want to leave. That's not the legacy. That's not the color we want to paint our legacy.
Right.
Emotional baggage and weight. But we hope that you learned something here today. And even if it wasn't something new, that at least you got to confirm information that you already had heard before, so that you know now that there's a baseline, a foundation of information in order to feel confident to take those steps. If this is like the 10th time you've heard this and you still don't have a trust, we hope. Why? No, nobody's going to know. How are they going to know? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if we know that if you do or not. You know if you do or not. And the whole point here is that we're taking actions. We're taking small, confident steps all the time, every single day, to become more and more self-directed, meaning that we understand where we are, what we're doing. We may deploy people to help us do it, but we understand how to pivot when opportunities come our way. We understand what needs to change in our trust, right? When opportunities come our way. We understand how this would impact the next generation or our significant other in the event that something were to happen, so that we can keep it going and doesn't have to feel so heavy and overwhelming. And I think that's where community comes and plays a part. And we have more and more people joining all the time. And we appreciate you guys so much, because time is the most valuable asset that we have. We haven't talked about anything today. Golly, we established that, right? The time we have and what we do with it. And so we are so grateful that you guys are spending your time here with us. So if you haven't already, start here. This is where you can get the downloads, everything we put here, just to make it easy. It's easy to remember. It's easy to type in. selfdirected.info/live and grab the Asset and Trust Protection Prep Guide. Words are in there. Asset and Trust Protection, Trust and Asset Protection Prep Guide. Trust Prep Guide.
I was trying to find make something out of the letters, but I can't.
I didn't really spend a whole lot of time with the name because you're TPG. You down with TPG?
Yeah, you know me.
This just in, we need to end this live stream. Okay. Well, we like to end with, if you didn't come from a wealthy family.
You can make sure a wealthy family comes from you.
Hold on. I got to turn this off.
No problem.
Okay. We're going to do it all over again. Yeah. Okay. If you didn't come from a wealthy family.
You can make sure a wealthy family comes from you.
So stay tuned.
Stay protected.
Stay focused.
Stay connected.
I'm Angelique.
And I'm Donnell.
And our goal is to help you
get self-directed.
And to do that, we have a ton of free resources, even more than we mentioned just a few moments ago. So don't sleep on those. We are live on Tuesdays now, 5:30 Pacific Standard Time, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, and all the standard times in between. You come at yours, okay? All right. Thanks so much for joining us. We will see you next week. Please leave your comments and feedback in the chat, and we will be down in there shortly to continue this conversation there. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Bye. Hey, before you go, we want to remind you that becoming fully self-directed means gaining complete control over your wealth, time, and freedom. It's not just an idea. It's a framework, a mindset, and the power to make informed decisions to secure your future. Being here means you're taking those steps, and we want to thank you for allowing us to guide you. We believe that we grow farther and faster when we grow together. So tune in next time and tell a friend to tell a friend. We've helped thousands of people just like you start their journey to financial freedom. And if they can do it, you can too. And if you're ready to learn more, we got you. Get a head start by grabbing these 2 free books. But how do they get them, Donnell?
Head over to my website where you'll have access to a few things. A ton of free resources, case studies, and over 100 5-star reviews from people just like you. And in 15 minutes, we can explore what's possible for you. So don't wait.
Invest in what you want, when you want.
But first, let us help you
Get self-directed.